mentioned, I noticed a comment or a question regarding the benefits of the CAP. You know, as part of our work to ensure that we include everyone, to ensure the social cohesion as well. So regarding the messages disseminated by the CAP, how can we adapt the message to target blind people and deaf people?
So for blind and deaf people, a big advantage is that the CAP message is already digital. So the key parts, the urgency, how soon, the certainty, how certain are we, and the severity, how bad is it going to be, those are all data. So you can simply translate that into whatever is the appropriate Braille or whatever system that's being used. Also to call it out in audio. There's free software that converts CAP messages to audio as well. Yeah. And of course, for the deaf, you're going the other way around and just presenting it visually. Yeah. Okay, I want to then go ahead and jump into the next presentation here, which I think we're supposed to be finished with in 35 minutes from now. So I'm going to try to move quickly through this. And I've already changed my first slide. So let me first point out, this is a tool for creating and publishing CAP alerts. It is not ideal in your emergency operations because ideally you should have something that fits into your existing business process. This is not the, so if you have a forecasting, for example, the forecast would include CAP. Well, if you don't have that, this is a stand-aside tool that you could use to just create the CAP. But on the other hand, this works for all types of hazards, not just the one that is specific to, say, for example, meteorological forecasting or flood forecasting. So I'm going to cover these 4 topics. And the first of those is I'm going to walk through what the thing looks like. And this is how it opens up. It's called CAP Editor. And this opens to an authorized person when they enter their email address and their associated password. You can come in as a guest, but as I'll point out, you don't have the ability to save anything if you're a guest. Here you set what is the language you're working in, what is the status, the scope, and the message type. So when you have those set the way you want, you hit the Compose button, and now you're presented with existing CAP alerts that are either drafts or already posted alerts, so you can choose which one you want to start from. You could also just choose any alert that you've seen anywhere and bring that in as your starting point. So you just scan the ones that are there. If you put your mouse over an entry, you see the text of the description and instruction elements as well, so you can decide which one you want to start with. So here I'm just going to assume we're doing a new alert, and the composer wants to start with a previously posted alert concerning an advisory for the Mount St. Helens volcano. So next what we'll see when we poke on that little button that says posted, or it says draft rather, we're going to see the main editing screen. So this is where you compose your CAP alert. It's initialized from that volcano alert. It's a web form. Whoops. It's a web form, so it has pull-down selections and input areas for text. If you put your mouse over any field, you can see the tip about what values are expected. You can also choose from these text templates. Down here, you see this highlight. That will open another screen, so you can just pick and choose the text that you want to use rather than have to compose from scratch. At any point, we can choose to validate the draft alert, and we can also save a copy of the alert. That's using the buttons up at the top. You can also choose to see the CAP alert in its XML format. So whenever you change anything on the left part of the screen in the form, you see, oh, as soon as you leave that field, it's updated in the XML. There's also a tool that is highlighted there in yellow of how to use the map interface. And here, I want to point out, where is Mount St. Helens in this circle. It's not in the center. It's off to the left. Why is that? We are not volcanologists. We're looking at the emergency from the point of view of its impact. Who's going to be affected? Well, for a volcano, the wind is driving the ash, and the ash is what's affecting most people. So the prevailing winds are coming from the west, so the impact area is out over here to the east. Here, now we see what happens when we hit the validate button, and you'll see in the right side of the screen, it's showing that we've passed your XML over to the Google Cap Validator, and Google Cap Validator has reported, yep, that's valid. So you see the little green. If there was any kind of an error, those would have been listed, and I'll demonstrate that when we walk through the actual tool. Here's what happens when you hit the save button. It simply says, hey, this has been saved to the drafts directory and is available privately. So you can email that alert to yourself, so you can forward it to your colleagues, to your boss, to anybody who has access, because this is a draft alert, so it is not allowed to go out in public. So they have to have password in order to see your draft. If the person composing the alert is authorized in the role of approver, then he or she can actually publish the alert. You see that in the yellow callout. And that publishing simply updates the CAP feed. So CAP feed is always in the order by most recent first. So at the very top, you would see there's the volcano alert that we just updated. Okay. I've talked a little bit about composer and approver. So let me just dive into that. I'm going to use Rwanda as an example of the cloud-based CAP editor in operational use. Rwanda Meteorological Agency, I was referred to them as METEO, is responsible for sending out emergency alerts for disasters in Rwanda. And like most other alerting authorities have done for decades, METEO sends an alert as a text bulletin. They then disseminate it via email and fax. They make phone calls to local radio and television, etc. All of this text-based dissemination has shortcomings. For one, broadcast media is reaching fewer people today because online media is replacing mass media. So many people who should be alerted are missed. Also, the broadcast media are imprecise, and that means you're getting people outside the alerting area by mistake. A further shortcoming is the alerting process is just way too slow for a sudden onset emergency like a flash flood. So let's consider, how would METEO use the free CAP editor tool to create and publish CAP alerts? Here, the web page at https://cap.alert-hub.org shows it's already initialized for Rwanda Meteorological Agency. In fact, it's initialized for almost 400 other alerting authorities. The page provides a link for creating METEO alerts and a link for the news feed specific to METEO. And in this case, the CAP editor interface happens to be in English only, but it can support any language. We are already supporting, I think, 22 different languages. We can add more easily. I mentioned anyone can preview the CAP editor tool at any alerting authority by simply entering as guest, although the guest user cannot save a draft alert and cannot publish an alert. Those actions require a password. That password is set only when the alerting authority head designates the persons who are allowed to perform those actions. In the CAP editor tool, the authorized users are either composers or approvers. Approver is simply a composer who also has that one additional function, publish the alert. Remember, the username is the user's email address. And the username and password for each composer and approver is registered to the whole user group for METEO in Amazon Web Services. So that is not specific to a language. So if you, for example, are in Switzerland, which has 4 official languages, plus they use English, so they probably have 5, even though it's a little country. You would use the same username and password, whatever language you're working on within that country. You, of course, have the web form that prompts the composer to enter those key facts, the where, the what, how soon, how bad, how certain, and the recommended actions. But that also provides a web map or a mapping tool for delineating the alerting area. And notice it's already focused in on your country. As soon as the CAP alert is composed and approved by Medio, their CAP alert newsfeed is updated, and this is what it looks like. Now, I mentioned the alerting authority head has to designate specific persons to act in the role of composer or approver, and I'll explain briefly how that works. So, the alerting authority head sends an email to the system administrator, that's me for now, to designate specific persons as composers or approvers. By the way, we have over 600 at the moment on CAP Editor. So an average of about 10 per alerting authority. Each of those persons gets an email explaining how to set his or her password for using the tool. That tool starts out in a testing status. And that means the composers and approvers are only allowed to publish test and exercise alerts, no actual alerts. When he or she is ready, the alerting authority head will tell the system administrator, me, to change the feed to operating. At that notice, all of the already published test and exercise alerts get removed, including all the sample alerts. You start out with about 6 sample alerts. So it's empty, and dissemination of alerts will begin. Composers and approvers can then begin to publish their actual alerts, and of course they can still do test and exercise if they want to. This is also the time when the alerting authority head should update the CAP feed URLs into their record in that register of alerting authorities. Okay, so if you are an official alerting authority, as soon as you go live, get your CAP feed URL into that register of alerting authority so that the rest of the world knows officially, yep, you're cool with people picking up their alerts at that place. So that's basically it. That's how you use the tool to become part of this vast dissemination network with global scale CAP alert hubs, etc. And all of that is at no cost to you, except of course the cost of learning. So what I want to do now is to run an exercise, and I'm going to show you how to use the cloud-based CAP editor. And if you have a PC, go ahead and follow along on your own, coming in as a guest. So for that, we're going to have a scenario, and anybody just call out here. We need to know, what is it? What kind of event do you want to have? We can do COVID. It's getting near Halloween. We can do a zombie attack. Then where is it? So we can draw the polygon. How soon do people need to act? The urgency, the severity of how bad is it? How sure are the experts? Certainty, and what action should people take? So anybody have a suggestion? What kind of alert would you like to do? Glacial lake outburst? Yes, I like it. In the news too, very topical. Okay, so you be thinking about where is it, when, etc. Someplace mountainous, we assume. All right, now I need to go over here and start my. Yeah, so that's already there. Just a second, I'm just mumbling. Okay, so here is the CAP editor. It's at cap.alert-hub.org. You can go there on your own and just go down and choose someplace maybe from your own country. You see there's hundreds here to choose from. I'm going to choose Rwanda. And at Rwanda, you see we have two things of interest. In the second column is the CAP editor. And over in the fourth column is the feed. So I'm going to choose the CAP editor. Let me make this a little bigger. So I'm just tapping on that, and I'm going to enter as a guest because I am not authorized to issue alerts for Rwanda. Now, I'm going to be working in English, so that's fine. I'm going to be doing a test alert. It's going to be public. This CAP editor is not really set up for doing private or restricted. If you want to do that, in other words, use CAP editor without going public, let me know. We can set that up. It's just a matter of adding passwords to your feed, really. And then, is this a new alert, an update, cancel, or error of a previous alert? So I'm going to say it's a new alert. So I hit the CAP or the compose CAP alert button. So here we see that I have some to choose from. And I have flood warnings. I have earthquake. I'm going to start with the flood one. I don't have the specific case of a glacial lake outburst, but we can work from this. We just need something so you don't have a complete blank screen. Again, making it a little bit bigger. Okay, I'm not going to go to, in the interest of time, all these different fields, but suffice it to say, there's just some of these that you need to worry about. Some of them are just automatically filled in. Excuse me. First one's automatically filled in. This first part of the identifier is kind of standardized worldwide for all time. It uses something called the object identifier, which is a ITU standard. First, it says it's a joint ITU and ISO. That's the 2. The 49 means it's CAP. The 0 means that it's tied to the Register of Alerting Authorities. The 1 says this is information from the alerting authority. If this was a 0, it's metadata about the alerting authority. So all of our actual alerts have a 1. Then 646 is the country code for Rwanda. Within Rwanda, the 0 means this is the Met agency. So unique for all time. People always know the context. Within Rwanda Medio, we make it unique by simply putting the date time sent. And that's in UTC, so that's globally comparable. Okay, the sender here, that's a good value. We're still going to be Medio Rwanda. The sent time is automatic. It's a test alert that is scope public, language English, category Met. Now, Met is because we're talking about a glacial lake outburst, which is considered probably meteorological. You might say hydrological, but meteorological is what we got, so that's what we use. You could have a safety issue. You could have a security, a rescue. You could have fire, whether it's an urban fire or wildland fire. You could have health. That's where all of our COVID alerts were going out. We had billions of them in India alone. Environmental, oil spill, good example of that. Transport, that could be a plane crash. It could be a derailment in the rail system. Infrastructure would be non-transport infrastructure. So that could be a power outage or gas line break, etc. CBR&E, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and high-yield explosive. Nasty stuff I don't want to dwell on, but yeah. And then other. I was told, Lisa told me that they had a situation in Seattle Harbor recently where there was an unexploded mine floating in the harbor. Not one of the categories, but fits because of other. Okay. So we're going to do flood. Now, glacial lake outburst. Let me ask our event terms first. Is flood the right term for that, or would we be much more specific? Norm. Flood's good. We're trying to get these more and more standardized. So you don't put flooding or floods, you put, I hope. Urgency. So help me out on this. 4 things to choose from. Always ignore the one that says unknown. Don't ever use unknown because it gets misinterpreted. We can talk about that separate if you want. The top 2 means you need to act within the next hour. The bottom two are less immediate. So immediate means act right now. Expected means you've got an hour. Now, why is that important? An hour is enough time for you to get your animals up onto higher ground, for you to get your documents off the ground floor up into the attic or something. So do these people have an hour? No, yeah. With a glacial lake outburst, it's a kind of flash flood. There's typically no warning. I guess if you had warning, it would be a planned release rather than an outburst. Okay, severity. Top two, people die. Next two, well, people don't die. How many people die? That is a national choice between severe or extreme. These are both life critical. So what do we say? Is it life critical or not? It is. You want to go extreme or severe? Extreme. Yeah. This is a national decision as to which ones you use. And frankly, I'm not sure it really matters. I'll talk a little bit about why it's important between the top two in each of these categories. But other than that, which one you use, once you're in the top two, I don't think it really matters. What is the certainty? Is this observed, likely, possible, or unlikely? I like to think of this as kind of the bell curve from social science. So two standard deviations. So 95% or better would be observed. 50% or better is likely. Less than 50 is possible. And less than 5% would be unlikely. So what do you say? Observed. Okay. So notice what we've got. We have people need to act within the next hour. People can die. And we're well more than 50% sure. Whenever you choose the top two levels of these, it's what we call a high priority alert. Some people might say it's a red alert, whatever term you like. But it is siren worthy. In the United States, this immediately goes to every cell phone in the alerting area, and it goes via cell broadcast. Okay, so that's a really important thing. In a classroom setting like this, this is the most common alert we get. In the real world, it's less than 1%. But hey, it's the ones we really want to get right. So yeah, it's the kind of things we focus on. So this is a really important alert. The expires time. Now, the expires by default here is set up to say 2 days from now. I think in the case of something like this, where it's observed and situations unfolding now, maybe something like 2 hours makes more sense. So I'm going to, if you don't mind, set the expires time to 2 hours from now. Expires means, when is this content stale? When should you look for an update? Okay, so that means within 2 hours, I'm going to tell you where we stand now with respect to this glacial lake outburst. Maybe we thought it was starting, but it turned out to not be as severe as we thought. So, hey, no big deal. Or, yes, it did happen. It was terrible, but there's nothing you can do about it now. Then you maybe have some other kind of follow-up as your next warnings. Okay, now I want to move down to how we're going to fill out the headline, the description, and the instruction. Remember, we started from a flood warning for a place in Rwanda. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that Rwanda doesn't have glacial lake outbursts. Maybe they do, but there'd be some highlands I'm not, or icy. You don't think so? Okay. Anyway, so we can imagine where it's going to be, and I'm going to just, at this point, just fill this in. This is where you would get more specific. And clearly, that's a term of art well known to the hydrological emergency management community. So go ahead and use that term. You want to use the terms that people would recognize. Don't use jargon if you can avoid it, but if it's something that the people involved would recognize, then that's exactly the term you use. I'm not going to try to get real precise here. And I'm going to just take away some of this text. But let me point out to you, you can use some of these text templates, and when you click on it, you find it's going to be just the alert language that we have in the language that you're working with. So if you're, in this case, we're working in English, so we see some English language things. So this is a kind of flood warning. And so here's a suggested headline, description, and instruction. So notice we have a little bit of a fill in here, flood warning for where. So you're going to have to say where in the headline. The description, what's causing the flood? It could be 4 things. It could be heavy rain. It could be storm surge. It could be a dam burst or a glacial lake outburst, which is kind of like a dam burst, except it's not a human-made dam. It's a glacial dam. And then the instruction. I will also point out that in addition to these templates, we have a prompt for you to choose from the public awareness and public education key messages already set up by the Red Cross. So above this line are whatever customized messages are already available for this country. There aren't any. So you can go down and look at, well, they don't have them, but I've seen the New Zealand ones before, and they're really good. There's Red Cross ones, there's Philippine Red Cross, etc. And then you would do those, and then of course go down to something close to what you're dealing with. So flash flood, American Red Cross. Here you see the key messages, and notice within the PAPE, or they call it PAPI, we have different time horizons. So whether you're at a watch or a warning, immediate. Okay, so in this case, it would be look at the immediate one. And this is the kind of things that they have. So you're looking basically for ideas here on what kind of things you should say. Particularly if you get these fairly often, or you've at least had a desktop exercise where you work through what would we say, then you've already got these. So store that as a template so that when a real one happens, you can just pick up and work from language that's already good. But this is just to say there's lots of places for you to go and get text. And this is a really good exercise for you to run when you start playing around. And I think the IFRC people will probably have some more to say about POP-A and how to customize messages and all that. Okay, then we have a web. So web, you can put a URL to a useful resource. I recommend do not use it unless you have something more specific than like your homepage for your agency. You're talking to people who are stressed. Don't send them off on a wild goose chase to go picking through your website and try to find stuff. However, if you have a webcam that's been watching that glacial lake, put the URL for that webcam because people can go see what's actually happening right now. That's a very good use of the web resource. Contact, the same idea holds. Do not put a contact if the contact is the same as the sender. So if the contact is, well, just contact our help desk at Medio Rwanda, don't do that. But if you've got somebody, this is our glacial lake outburst coordinator who is just well-versed in this particular kind of thing and have dealt with these emergencies before, by all means, put that contact information right there. Contact is probably used mostly by a radio TV station who like, I want some B-roll to go with the story I'm going to run tonight. So who's a good person to contact for that? Both of those are optional fields. You can see here we left them blank. So the area, we certainly need to get the area right. And we have 2 things we need to do. We need to describe it in text, and we actually need to give the polygon. So here I have a polygon already drawn because we started from one. And this is in northern Rwanda, as you can see. Now, remember I said when you bring up your alert for your agency, it's already focused on what country you're in. I will also just make note very quickly, because otherwise it's a little confusing for people. we have different base layers that we can choose from. I generally like to use the Esri one because Esri gives you place names in whatever languages you use on your browser. Well, my browser is in English, say I see all place names as though that place used English. And in this case, they do, but if I go to neighboring countries or I go to Saudi Arabia, I would see all the place names in Arabic on the OpenStreetMap. That's what OSM means here. So anyway, you can choose between those. The Google one here is simply the satellite imagery, which for some kind of alerts is easier to see what area you want to work with. But you can play with this. It's already got an area. I can just delete that. If you want to delete the area and start new, I recommend just go up and delete it, literally highlight it and delete it. So the polygon, if you change the polygon values, the map follows. If you change the map, the polygon follows. Now, when the actual XML goes out, it doesn't have a map. It's got the polygon, and of course, whatever that end user is using as their map, that's what will show up. So if you're in-car navigation, it's the map on that. If it's Google Maps, it's the map on that. If it's Esri map, etc. So I can just show you how to draw a new polygon here. So I'm going to do my glacial lake outburst. It's something that at least looks kind of hilly. So I'm going to go up here and just start drawing. This is a fun tool, and I usually spend way too much time playing with it for geospatial. So have fun with it, but I'm not going to do much here except show you that I drew it, and having drawn it, you see I now have the polygon filled in. Okay? So that's how that works. I don't really have enough time to go into more detail. Please do play with this. And, you know, if you find like over lunch or whatever, you're having fun and have a question, call me over and we'll talk some more. So at this point, what I would do is possibly save it, but instead I'm just going to show you what happens when I hit the validate. And here we see Google Cap Validator says, whoops, got a bunch of things on my screen here. Busy. And it shows where it is, and it says valid. Now notice when I was drawing, it was making the outline red. Here it shows blue. You don't really control that. You're giving the key facts. You are not designing the actual presentation to the user. You don't control what the siren sounds. You don't control what the newscaster will say on TV. You're giving the key facts, and then you're trusting the rest of the dissemination chain to do the right thing given the key facts. Because you as an agency, your responsibility is to get the key facts, get them right, and then let the dissemination proceed. I mentioned that if it had an error, I'm going to mess up the field here for the sender, which is supposed to be an email address. If I hit validation now, you'll see that Google Cap Validator says error. Sender must not include spaces. So I'll go back and fix that. And then when I do a validation with it fixed, the error is corrected. It's valid again. Okay? So you see how that all works. I know I'm already impinging on our break time. So let me just show you that for Rwanda, they have a feed. Now, remember, I did not sign in with a password, and therefore I was not able to save it. And because I couldn't save it, I also couldn't publish it. But here's what their cap feed looks like. And the latest one there would be this glacial lake outburst that we just created. That would be the top one. When you click on one of those, remember Cap Alert is XML. Do you see XML? No, because that would be rude. People can't read XML. So it's got a style sheet. And the style sheet says, hey, I know the polygon. Let me show it to you as a map. And the rest of the fields are just there in a little more friendly format. And of course, you can make that style sheet however you want. You want to put your own header and footer on there, by all means, it's set up for you to do that. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to take note that it is 11 o'clock. Let me just, without switching to the actual presentation, explain briefly that what happens next is you've got a cap feed URL. Simplest thing for you to do, having just implemented cap editor, is to put a link to that on your website and then tell your sister agencies, the Civic Authority if you're Met, or Met Authority if you're Civic, or whatever, tell your other agencies, hey, look for my alerts here. Do the same with your radio and TV folks and your print media. Look for my alerts here. They're going to love it. What they have to do without CAP is they have to try to get you to call them first, because they're news organizations. They want to know right away. This way, everybody gets it at the same time. So it actually, it's good for all of them. And doesn't take a lot of interpretation to get the story right. It's got the kind of things that journalists need. Who, what, where, when. It's already set up for that. So they're going to be more error-free than without CAP. So they're going to basically love it when you do this. So that's the easiest thing for you. Just put a pointer up there to that. Now you're going to automatically be put out to these CAP alert hubs if you're official. And that means that it's going to start going to, Google Maps, to Medio, Blue, various other folks, automatically. And if you want to, you can contact your mobile network operator, say, hey, here's where my alerts are. The headline is already set up for you. It's the size of SMS text. So they can just start doing that. They also want to get into cell broadcast, which we'll hear more about later. That's pretty straightforward to do as well. If you want to get that automatically set up for radio and television so that it gets the crawl text, so that it goes to digital highway signs, so that it goes to translate to audio and put into the radio, that is available, very low cost. It's a little Raspberry Pi device that Radio Rob in Canada can tune you into. Home smart speakers, traffic controls, a lot of that is already automated. And of course, your emergency operators have their own networks, the police radio, the fire dispatch, all those systems can pick them up too. You can become part of the emergency operations center, because you will find that in most places, they're already using CAP. It's been around for enough years now. We also have the ability for these alerts to get to people who have access to the last mile. Think, for example, you have a university that is in the alerting area. That university's got a security office, and that security office has a big red button that will sound the alarm. So if the security officer can get the CAP alert on his cell phone, then he knows, hit that thing. So the last mile is that person hitting a button that notifies all of those students. Okay, same idea with church bells. Church bells, the traditional way that we've been doing alerting, and you can hear about it here in Switzerland from major events that happened right here. And those church bells just require that priest or imam, in the case of using the minaret, can ring the church bells or put an emergency alert out on the minaret to warn people. And of course, police with bullhorns in squad cars, that's for the homeless people who aren't going to have a cell phone, aren't in an area where there's a siren because they're squatting on a hillside where it's not even safe to be living, but that's where they are. So the police in their squad cars can go focus on them, because you know where your alert got through, because people are clicking through on your links. So you say, oh, yeah, here's my heat map. Oh, look, this whole neighborhood. Oh, yeah. Those cell towers have been down for the last week. So that's why nobody got it. That's where we send the police. Okay, so let me stop at this point. And before we